Dyatlov Pass incident, one of the most chilling and perplexing mysteries in modern history, continues to confound experts and laypeople alike. On February 2nd, 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embarked on an expedition in the remote Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union. The hikers, all students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, intended to complete a skiing journey that would bring them to Otorten, a mountain in the northern Urals. However, on February 12th, after failing to return as scheduled, the group was reported missing. By February 26th, search teams discovered their tent, abandoned and inexplicably slashed open from the inside. What followed was a grim discovery of the hikers' bodies, scattered across the area, exhibiting puzzling injuries and strange circumstances that defied rational explanation. Despite decades of investigations and multiple theories, the cause of their deaths remains unresolved. The lack of conclusive evidence and the bizarre nature of the case have inspired a wide range of speculation, from natural causes like an avalanche or infrasound to more extraordinary theories involving military tests or even paranormal events. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not just a tragedy. It has become a symbol of the unknown, an enigma that continues to intrigue and haunt those who study it. Books, documentaries, and films have kept the story alive in popular culture, with each new attempt to solve the mystery shedding light on just how little we know about what truly happened. This video aims to delve deeper into the Dyatlov Pass incident, examining the details of the hikers' journey, the discovery of their bodies, and the leading theories that attempt to explain the inexplicable. By exploring each of these theories in depth, we hope to understand the broader implications of the case, from the psychological impact on those investigating it to the cultural fascination with unsolved mysteries. What caused the deaths of the Dyatlov group? Was it a natural disaster, a deliberate act, or something else entirely? These are the questions that still linger today, and this video seeks to explore them in an effort to uncover the truth. The Dyatlov group, led by Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 8 men and 1 woman, all students and experienced hikers at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. The members of the group were seasoned mountaineers, each having completed a number of successful expeditions prior to this one. Dyatlov, the leader, had been an enthusiastic skier and mountaineer, known for his methodical and cautious approach to the sport. His leadership in planning the expedition was based on their shared experience, with all members being physically fit and accustomed to harsh outdoor conditions. The team's objective was to hike through the rugged terrain of the northern Ural Mountains, reaching Otorten, a peak located 10 kilometers north of where their bodies were eventually found. The hike was intended to be a challenging but achievable goal for a group of their skills. However, the route they selected would lead them into some of the most treacherous conditions in the Soviet Union. The mountains of the Ural region are known for their severe winter weather, with temperatures regularly plunging well below freezing. The Ural Mountains, though not as high as other major ranges, are prone to high winds, heavy snow, and sudden shifts in weather, all of which could pose a serious threat to unprepared travelers. The team departed from Sverdlovsk, modern-day Yekaterinburg, on January 27, 1959. They arrived at the base of the mountains and began their trek into the wilderness. As they progressed along the route, the weather turned increasingly hostile, with temperatures dropping significantly and heavy snowstorms complicating their journey. Nevertheless, the group pressed on, setting up camp at the base of the Dyatlov Pass, which was situated on the slopes of Kolasyakhl, a remote and isolated area of the Urals. On the evening of February 1st, the group made camp at the foot of the mountain. It was during the night of February 2nd, in the midst of this unforgiving landscape, that something went terribly wrong. The hikers cut open their tent from the inside and fled the shelter in various states of undress, leaving behind their belongings, including their shoes and warm clothing. The actions they took in those final moments have been described as hasty and uncharacteristic of seasoned mountaineers, raising questions about the cause of their flight. The remaining weeks after the hikers' disappearance were filled with tension and confusion as a search effort was launched. Initially, there were no signs of foul play, and the authorities believed the hikers might have become lost or disoriented in the harsh weather. But when their bodies were found, scattered across the area and showing signs of strange injuries, it became clear that this was no ordinary mountaineering accident. Investigators found that the hikers had sustained a range of injuries, including severe blunt force trauma and internal injuries such as broken ribs and skull fractures. One of the most baffling aspects of the case was the absence of external wounds to the hikers' faces and the presence of strange, unexplained marks on their bodies. Additionally, some of the hikers' clothing was found to be radioactive, further adding to the mystery. These peculiarities would prompt authorities to explore a variety of theories regarding the group's deaths, including an avalanche, a military accident, and even the possibility of supernatural involvement. This tragic event, which claimed the lives of 9 young adventurers, remains one of the most enigmatic and unresolved mysteries in modern history. Despite several investigations, the true cause of their deaths remains elusive. The lack of a clear explanation has given rise to numerous theories, each attempting to unravel the strange circumstances of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The search for the Dyatlov group began after the hikers failed to return by the scheduled date of February 12, 1959. Initially, the Soviet authorities assumed that the hikers had simply lost their way or encountered an accident that delayed their return. However, as days passed and the hikers remained missing, concern began to mount. A search party was organized, comprising military personnel, volunteers, and local police officers. The team began their search on February 20th, after the hikers' families alerted authorities to their disappearance. On February 26, 1959, the search party made the grim discovery that would change everything. The hikers' tent was found on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, about 1.5 kilometers from the main trail. What struck the searchers immediately was the condition of the tent. It was cut open from the inside, indicating that the hikers had fled in a hurry. The tent was set up in a manner that suggested the hikers had planned to spend the night there. Yet the fact that it had been slashed open from the inside suggested that something had prompted them to escape in a state of extreme urgency. Additionally, the hikers had left their belongings behind, including their shoes, warm clothing, and even personal items like cameras and notebooks. One of the most baffling aspects of the scene was that the hikers' footprints were visible in the snow, leading away from the tent. The tracks indicated that the hikers had fled barefoot or wearing only socks, despite the freezing temperatures and the treacherous conditions. Some of the footprints led to a nearby tree, where investigators discovered signs that the hikers had attempted to climb the tree, possibly to escape some danger. However, the tree provided no explanation for their actions. The search teams continued to search the area for weeks, combing the wilderness for any signs of the missing hikers. It was not until March 5, 1959, that the bodies of the first 2 hikers were discovered at the base of the mountain. Their bodies were found lying in a ravine, a considerable distance from the tent. Over the following weeks, the bodies of the remaining hikers were located, scattered around the area. Some of the bodies were found under several feet of snow, suggesting that they had fallen or been dragged there. Others were found partially dressed, some in clothing that appeared to have been hastily removed or altered. It was apparent that something had driven the hikers to abandon their camp in the middle of the night. But what that something was remained a mystery. Upon examination of the bodies, investigators discovered a range of strange and disturbing injuries. Several of the hikers had suffered blunt force trauma, including severe rib fractures and skull fractures. However, there were no external wounds on their faces or heads, which is unusual for injuries of this type. Some of the bodies showed signs of disfigurement, with one hiker's eyes and tongue missing, and another's facial features appearing to have been altered in a manner that suggested animal predation. The most disturbing discovery was the presence of radiation on some of the hikers' clothing. This radioactive contamination would lead to further speculation about the possible involvement of military experiments or secret government operations in the area. Despite the extensive search efforts and the numerous theories that have since been proposed, no clear explanation has emerged to account for the hikers' deaths. The bizarre injuries, the unexplained behavior of the hikers, and the presence of radiation have led many to believe that there was something more to this tragedy than a simple mountaineering accident. Theories ranging from natural disasters to military cover-ups to paranormal phenomena have been put forward, but the truth remains elusive. Now let's delve deeper into the various theories that have emerged over the years to explain the Dyatlov Pass incident. Each theory offers a potential explanation for the strange events surrounding the deaths of the hikers, but none provide a definitive answer. We'll explore each theory in detail, examining the evidence supporting them and the arguments against them. 1. The avalanche theory. The avalanche theory is perhaps the most widely accepted explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident. Avalanches are a known hazard in mountainous terrain, particularly in the Ural Mountains, where heavy snow and steep slopes can create the ideal conditions for a snowslide. According to this theory, the hiker's tent was caught in a small avalanche that forced them to abandon their camp in a panic. The avalanche could have been triggered by a variety of factors, including unstable snow, a sudden shift in weather conditions, or natural movement in the snowpack. In support of this theory, several experts point out the location of the tent. The hikers set up camp on a slope, which is a known risk for avalanches, and there were signs of snow movement in the area. Additionally, the hikers' injuries, particularly the severe rib fractures, are consistent with the type of trauma that would be caused by an avalanche. The avalanche theory is further supported by the discovery of the hikers' footprints, which led away from the tent and up the hill, as if they were attempting to escape the snowstorm. However, there are several problems with this theory. Most notably, no evidence of an avalanche was found at the scene. There were no snow deposits near the tent, and the slope where the tent was located showed no signs of an avalanche. Additionally, the hikers' injuries were inconsistent with typical avalanche trauma, as they did not have the external injuries commonly associated with being buried in snow. The military involvement theory. The military involvement theory suggests that the hikers stumbled upon a secret military test or operation, which led to their deaths. This theory gained traction due to the location of the Dyatlov Pass incident, which was in a remote area that was known to be used by the Soviet military for testing weapons and conducting experiments. Some believe that the hikers inadvertently came into contact with a secret military operation, possibly involving chemical or biological weapons, or that they were exposed to some kind of experimental technology. One key piece of evidence that supports this theory is the discovery of radiation on the hikers' clothing. Radiation exposure is typically associated with military testing, particularly in the context of nuclear weapons testing. Some researchers have speculated that the hikers were exposed to radioactive materials, either by accident or as part of a covert military operation. There is also the fact that the Soviet Union was known to conduct secretive experiments during the Cold War, particularly in remote areas like the Ural Mountains. However, there are several challenges to the military involvement theory. First, the presence of radiation on the hikers' clothing could be explained by the hikers' proximity to a source of contamination, such as a radioactive rock, rather than a deliberate military operation. Additionally, there is no solid evidence that the Soviet military was conducting any operations in the area at the time of the incident. The Soviet government's secrecy surrounding the case has fueled conspiracy theories, but no concrete evidence has emerged to support the idea that the hikers were victims of a military cover-up. 3. The infrasound theory. The infrasound theory posits that the hikers were victims of a rare and dangerous phenomenon known as infrasound. Infrasound is sound that is below the range of human hearing, typically below 20 hertz, and it has been shown to cause a range of physical and psychological effects on humans. According to this theory, the hikers were exposed to infrasound produced by the wind interacting with the unique topography of the Dyatlov Pass. This could have led to disorientation, panic, and hallucinations, causing the hikers to flee the tent in a state of fear and confusion. Proponents of the infrasound theory point out that the hikers' behavior was erratic and illogical, suggesting that they were acting under the influence of extreme stress or fear. Some experts believe that infrasound could have caused the hikers to experience a heightened state of anxiety, leading them to abandon their tent in the middle of the night, despite the freezing temperatures and dangerous conditions. There are also claims that the hikers' injuries, particularly the broken ribs and skull fractures, could be consistent with the effects of infrasound-induced panic. While the infrasound theory is intriguing, it also has its limitations. For one, there is little evidence to suggest that the wind conditions in the Dyatlov Pass area would have generated infrasound at a level strong enough to cause harm. Additionally, the theory does not fully explain the injuries sustained by the hikers, particularly the missing eyes and tongue, which are not typical symptoms of infrasound exposure. 4. The Yeti or animal attack theory. The Yeti or animal attack theory suggests that the hikers were killed by a wild animal, possibly a Yeti or a bear. This theory was fueled by reports of large animal tracks near the campsite, as well as the fact that some of the hikers' bodies were disfigured in a manner that seemed to suggest animal predation. The missing eyes and tongue of one of the hikers were particularly disturbing and led some to believe that an animal had attacked the group. Supporters of this theory argue that the hikers may have been caught off guard by an attack, forcing them to flee the tent in a panic. The presence of large animal tracks near the campsite could suggest that a bear or another large predator had been nearby. However, there are several problems with this theory. First, the hikers were experienced outdoorsmen and would have been aware of the dangers posed by wild animals. Secondly, there was no sign of any animal blood or fur at the scene, which would be expected if a bear or other predator had attacked. Additionally, there are no other reports of Yeti sightings in the region, making it unlikely that a mythical creature was responsible for the deaths. The supernatural or paranormal theories. Over the years, one of the more intriguing and sensational theories that have emerged is that the Dyatlov Pass incident may have involved supernatural or paranormal forces. These theories typically invoke ideas of ancient curses, otherworldly entities, or even extraterrestrial involvement. While these explanations are the least scientifically supported, they have garnered significant attention, particularly in popular culture and in some fringe academic circles. One popular supernatural explanation centers around the idea of a curse. The theory suggests that the hikers inadvertently entered an area with a dark history, possibly involving an ancient tribal curse or spiritual forces that drove them to their tragic end. This line of thought often ties into the idea that the mountain where the incident occurred, Kolotsiko, has an ominous name, which translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. The very name of the mountain has led some to believe that the group may have been subjected to an ancient supernatural curse, causing them to act irrationally before their deaths. Others have proposed that the hikers encountered extraterrestrial beings or UFOs during their journey. This theory posits that the hikers witnessed an unidentified flying object in the sky, which led to a sudden panic that caused them to flee their tent in terror. Proponents of this theory point to the strange, unexplainable circumstances surrounding the hikers' deaths, such as their apparent state of fear, the injuries they sustained, and the radioactive contamination found on their clothing. While there is no physical evidence to support such claims, the allure of a UFO or alien involvement persists, especially in the realm of conspiracy theories. While these theories have little empirical evidence and are widely regarded as speculative, they continue to attract attention due to their mysterious and sensational nature. In popular media, the Dyatlov Pass incident has often been linked to supernatural elements, fueling the public's imagination and perpetuating a sense of intrigue that keeps the mystery alive. Despite their lack of credibility in the scientific community, supernatural theories continue to be part of the larger conversation about the Dyatlov Pass incident, offering an alternative to more grounded explanations that may be difficult to accept for those who seek an extraordinary answer to this unfathomable tragedy. 6. The psychological and group dynamics theory. Another theory that has been put forward to explain the events at Dyatlov Pass involves the psychological dynamics of the group. This theory suggests that some form of mass panic, possibly exacerbated by the extreme stress of the expedition, led the hikers to act irrationally and flee from the tent in a confused and disorganized state. Stress, isolation, and the harsh environmental conditions they faced may have induced a psychological breakdown among the group, causing them to lose their rationality. The idea behind this theory is that the hikers, although experienced, could have succumbed to the mental pressures of being in a remote and perilous location. Long periods of isolation, coupled with physical exhaustion and the harsh winter conditions, can have significant psychological effects on individuals, leading to erratic behavior. In this scenario, the hikers might have believed that they were in immediate danger, prompting them to cut their tent open from the inside and flee without regard for their safety. It's possible that they were so overwhelmed by fear or confusion that they didn't stop to put on their shoes or adequate clothing. One particular aspect of this theory revolves around the idea of hysteria. Group hysteria can manifest in situations of extreme stress, causing individuals to act out of fear without thinking clearly. If the group experienced collective panic, it might explain why they abandoned the tent without taking the necessary precautions to protect themselves from the freezing conditions. While psychological breakdown and panic are plausible explanations, especially when considering the group's remote and isolated location, this theory doesn't adequately explain some of the more bizarre details of the incident, such as the severe injuries that some of the hikers sustained or the absence of external signs of struggle. Nonetheless, the psychological and group dynamics theory adds a layer of complexity to the mystery, suggesting that the human mind's vulnerability in extreme conditions may have contributed to the tragic outcome. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most perplexing and mysterious events in modern history. Despite extensive investigations, numerous theories, and decades of speculation, the exact cause of the hikers' deaths continues to elude experts. Each of the theories put forward, whether it involves a natural disaster like an avalanche, a military operation, psychological factors, or even supernatural phenomena, presents a unique angle on the events surrounding the hikers' tragic end. However, none of these theories can fully account for all the strange and contradictory evidence found at the scene. The avalanche theory, while plausible, doesn't explain the strange injuries or the absence of avalanche-related signs. The military involvement theory remains speculative, with no concrete evidence linking the event to Soviet military activities. Similarly, the infrasound theory, while intriguing, doesn't account for the hikers' physical injuries or the evidence of radiation. Supernatural theories, though captivating, lack scientific support, and the psychological breakdown theory, while offering an explanation for the hikers' erratic behavior, fails to explain the full scope of the incident. The truth perhaps lies in a combination of factors, with elements of natural disasters, human psychology, and external pressures converging in a way that led to a tragic and inexplicable outcome. The case may never be fully solved, and this uncertainty is what continues to fuel the fascination with the Dyatlov Pass incident. For decades, the mystery has captivated the imaginations of countless people, inspiring books, documentaries, and even fictional accounts of the events. In the end, the Dyatlov Pass incident serves as a haunting reminder of the unpredictability of life and the vast unknowns that remain in our world. It also raises broader questions about human survival, the limits of scientific understanding, and the stories we create when faced with the unexplainable. While the mystery may never be solved to everyone's satisfaction, the Dyatlov Pass incident will remain an enduring enigma, its legacy preserved in the collective memory of those who have tried to understand it.